And welcome back.
Yes, welcome back. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Before we even tell people who we are, we want everyone to know that our hearts go out to what's going on in the Hill Country in Texas. You're closer to it than I am, Brian, but that's your old neck of the woods, Kerrville, Fredericksburg, that whole area. Wow, that's some insane amount of damage in such a short amount of time.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I've kind of a colleague up in sort of the just west of New Braunfels, frankly, pretty far away from the focal point of all the insanity. He indicated he got 9 inches of rain in 18 hours.
yeah, I got similar
It's,
reports from my
it's
cousin out in
like
Fredericksburg.
that's because annual fault rainfall down here, I think, is 35 inches a year. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's too much.
And it's not the kind we want because the ground gets so good and hard packed that it just turns into if you've never
Right,
experienced a
cement.
good old fashioned
Right.
Texas flash flood, count yourself lucky. And again, excellent work on the part of the Trump administration and the Abbott administrations in,
Yeah.
firing people who work for the Weather Service. Well done, gentlemen. Well done, you
Yes. Yes.
jackasses.
Yep.
Anyway,
Crushing
this is
it.
this is Dream Idiots. I'm Morris, that's Brian, and each week we tell each other stories. Sometimes the stories are from history, sometimes they're from current events, sometimes they're from our own personal wretched existences. Brian, where can the folks find us if they want more stuff?
Well, we have the shiny new website at dreamidiots.com. You can check out the whole
Woo!
back catalog of stuff going back now 4 years, 100 with some bonus episodes, 175 episodes or so. Got the merch on there as well. You can drop us a line, email us directly at dreamidiotspodcast at gmail if you'd like. There's a contact us form there as well, where you can submit story ideas if you want, or give us a curse word of the week. Merch link is there. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram as well. We are at Dream Idiots. And thanks for tagging along.
And each week when we tell each other stories, we take turns going first. Brian gets the odd numbered episodes, and this is episode 155. So if you're ready, Brian, what you got for us this week?
I am ready. So, full disclosure on this one that the sources, the news sources for this are not phenomenal, and some of the details are a little bit sketchy. And so I kind of worked this whole story sort of two and a half times because there were some holes, and I was trying to figure out the best way to tell it because it's not very well covered. So things are a little sketchy, and the story is not over yet, as we will see. Some of the content came from TMZ and Reddit and something called OK Magazine. Not exactly, sources known for their journalistic integrity. And some information seems to just outright contradict each other. So, nevertheless, here we go. Zoe McLellan was born in La Jolla, California in November 1974, making her 50 years old today. Family moved to Washington State. She attended South Kitsap High School in Port Orchard, Washington. A friend of mine just moved to Port Orchard, Washington. She was homecoming queen. Aw. And I'm sorry if your name is spelled Zoe, your name is Zoe, not Zoe. You're not Alonzo Mourning. So if you want to Google Zoe McLellan, feel free to do so. At some point shortly thereafter, graduating from high school, she caught the acting bug and decided to head to California to make it in show business. And so you'll see a picture of her when you Google her. You have to let me know if you recognize her at all. She's very much in that mold of the '90s, early 2000s kind of cute brunette, the Nev Campbell, the Jennifer Love Hewitt, the woman who's on the AT&T commercials. Uh, when I first remember seeing a picture of her, I remember thinking she looked familiar, and then when I looked at things she'd been in, I hadn't seen any of them. So I don't know how I might have known her.
Yeah, she's kind of
So
got a Marquise Harding gay look going on too. Kind of,
yes, yeah,
okay.
very much so. So she is trying to build a career for herself in the early '90s. I think she may have done some modeling work as well. She starts getting small roles in television and film, so she's having some success. In 1995, she's in Mr. Holland's Opus.
Oh yeah.
By 2000, she is one of the leads in sort of an ensemble cast for the original Dungeons and Dragons movie. On TV, she manages to score roles. one-offs in Sliders. I should remember the show Silk Stockings. I remember the commercials for it.
Yes, I
I
remember
never
Silk
watched it.
Stockings.
And Star Trek Voyager. In the early 2000s, she has a recurring role on Jag, and was even added. That character was added to the main cast for season 10. By 2007, she's on Dirty Sexy Money. Again, a show I recall dimly but never watched. She was on it for its two-season run. She had guest appearances around the same time on The Mentalist and House. So she's a genuine working actor. So, good for
Sure.
her. In 2012, she starts dating a man named Jean-Pierre Guy Guillain. They marry shortly thereafter. He goes by JP. I'm assuming he's just JP Guillain. I think he's fairly Americanized, but not sure.
Okay.
In 2013, they welcome a son. I'm going to refrain from mentioning the kid's name on the podcast only because he's a minor. But if you end up Googling this story later on, his name is definitely findable. She then spends a 2 or 3 year period in Louisiana, 2014 to 2016, working on NCIS New Orleans, starring
Scott Bakula?
Scott Bakula. It's clear that she and family are living there most of the time and perhaps commuting back and forth to California occasionally, but the show is shot locally and she's in the main cast. So it's a fairly rigorous, job. It's a more than full-time job. During 2015, they have a rental property in Metairie, Louisiana, which is, I mean, I'm not sure whether it's even qualifies as a different town. It butts up against New Orleans. And I don't exactly know when or how an investigation begins, but McLellan would later allege that her son was being sexually abused by her husband during 2015 while in Louisiana. It is also later alleged that there are two video interviews with the child where he indicates what happened. The marriage, not surprisingly, falls apart. She and Ghislaine are divorced by 2016. Again, some commuting back and forth to Louisiana, and it may well be the case that she maintains a property in Louisiana going forward after the show, after her stint on the show ends in 2016. Divorce is definitely bitter, and they're fighting like crazy over custody. And it's just one of those typical stories that is probably exaggerated by some money and some Hollywood success, and this fighting over, are you picking up at 2 p.m. versus 3 p.m. Just the fucking with your ex that you do when there when there's kids involved.
Mhm.
Do you have them this Saturday? Do I have them this Saturday? Do you have them last Christmas? Just the ticky tacky crap that's made even more ridiculous and complex by I judge being across multiple states. I think they're going back and forth between Louisiana, California, and likely elsewhere. So lesson number one, and and how to ruin a child quickly, or how to ruin a child's life quickly. So this fight pretty much goes on for 5 years straight, just unabated fighting over custody. I believe the custody fight is actually started or being hashed out in civil court in Louisiana. On at least one occasion, Scott Bakula, the star of NCIS New Orleans, actually shows up and testifies on McClellan's behalf. So as basically just a character witness. Shortly thereafter, McClellan lands a recurring role on Law and Order SVU for 2 or 3 episodes, and then Suits for like 4 episodes. Finally, 2017, she starts working on Designated Survivor, another show I'd never watched a second of, starring.
Kiefer Sutherland. That's actually it's the only one on this list that I've watched.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with Kiefer Sutherland, again, more fighting over custody. On one occasion, she takes the kid with her to Toronto because that's where the show is being shot. But apparently she didn't have permission or updated permission to do so, or, I mean, because they're endlessly fighting over this. It's hard to know whether Ghislaine's blowing a gasket over this is genuine or not, or whether she had permission or not. Nevertheless, she takes the kid to Toronto for a period of time while she's working. He flips his lid, but nothing really comes of it because the judge essentially rules that it's an honest mistake. She wasn't, there's no horseshit here. She's not trying to abscond with the child to Timbuktu.
And quote, it's only Toronto.
Right. The 51st state, right? So, it must be the case that they come to one agreement, and then when a party wants to change the agreement, or there, again, there's just endless back and forth over dealing with the kid. Uh, at some point in this window of time, 4 or 5 year window of time, McClellan becomes convinced that her son either had been abused or maybe is facing ongoing abuse at the hands of her now ex-husband, Ghislaine. So, going to Radar Online and OK Magazine, again, bastions of journalistic integrity, there's a guy who pops up named Charlie Barber. So, Barber reconnects with McClellan toward the end of 2019. They had met on NCIS New Orleans. I'm not sure whether he was an actor there or not. It may be the case that he has connections to sort of law enforcement. Maybe he was providing security on on sets or whatever. But they have kids the same age, and somewhere on one of her online profiles, she has a graphic that's titled "Believe the Child." I mean, she has a "Believe the Child" page in honor of her son. So, end of 2019, they start dating and kind of hanging out, mostly seemingly because they have kids the same age. McClellan is very much keeping her son sort of sequestered, and so but they kind of spend most every weekend outside hiking, doing other things, kind of just the four of them. January of 2020, Ghislaine is arrested in California, and he is extradited to Louisiana. He's booked January 22nd of 2020 on charges of aggravated rape and for crimes against nature. So McClellan and Barber are spending quite a bit of time together in in the spring of 2020. McClellan finds out that Barber has a friend who works at the Jefferson County Parish Jail. She starts making, so whenever they're together, she starts kind of prodding Barber a little bit and asking questions, very unusual, questions about, can you find out about what Ghislaine is doing in jail? What is his life like? How is he doing? She's making all these questions, and it's clear that she wants these questions, passed on to the friend who works in the jail. Finally, Barber gets irritated at being the middleman. Okay, uh, and he just gives McClellan his friend's phone number. Wait a week or two.
Hmm.
The friend then calls Barber up and says, "Yeah, I need to get away from that lady," referring to McClellan, obviously, saying, "quote She never flat out asked me to take care of him, but I've been in the prison system for too long. I know what she was asking me. She's trying to get the husband killed in jail, killed or
Oh
injured."
my.
Barber also recalls a moment that took place in 19 when McClellan, makes the request of him. He basically asks him to watch her son alone in a hotel room while he played video games. And Barber said later on in this interview with this magazine, quote, "Well, that got me thinking even more. Why would she let a child go into a room with another man after claiming that the dad did what he did?" So suffice it to say, Barber and the friend probably are relieved to be rid of her shortly thereafter. So Ghislaine is brought up on charges. He is in Jefferson Parish, county jail. But by essentially May 1st, the DA declines to prosecute based on the lack of evidence, and Ghislaine is released. The Ghislaine's attorney, a guy named Stephen Lemoyne, says, quote, "He is an innocent man. There was no corroboration for the things the little boy said. There were so many contradictions. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm not a cop. I'm not an investigator. I'm not a DA. I don't understand how someone can be arrested and detained for 3 or 4 months, and actually held, but then have the charges be dropped. That just smells bad to me." Um,
You know what it smells like? Smells like Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. That's what it smells like.
so, so that just doesn't never quite make sense. Within a week or two of Ghislaine being released from jail, Zoe McLellan and her son completely vanish, disappear completely. If you look for her online, there is
Hmm.
an Instagram page that presumably is either, her official sort of celebrity Instagram page. Uh, on it, There's a page dedicated to her son at missingkids.org. That's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. On her Instagram page, there's nothing there. There's nothing public, but in the header, there's a link to a fundraiser page, which brought in about $25,000 during 20 and sort of the early part of 2021. The fundraiser portion of it has been suspended, so it's no longer raising money. That page now reads, "Thank you for your reports. This campaign is under review due to active legal proceedings. We are in contact with the campaign owners."
Holy shit.
There are quote unquote updates on this page. If the way some of these pages are set up is that when you create them, it actually uses your IP address to monitor updates. The updates are being made, if that's the case on this page, I believe it is, updates on this page, which haven't been done since the end of 2020, I believe, were not being done in Louisiana. They're being done in somewhere in California, probably LA. There is one video clip of her that is her just thanking folks for their support. The fundraising campaign raised $25,000. She's worth supposedly $5 million. So I don't quite get why she's raising money in the first place if she has all this cash. The video clip from her is about 4 months after she vanished, so it's like September of 20. OK Magazine is my source that indicated she had earned about $5 million in her career. That's a tidy sum to live off of if you needed to vanish. But this is not 1925. I don't understand how a woman, a pretty lady who likes nice things, who is in the modeling and who has no survival skills. She's not a former Green Beret. You can't go into Wells Fargo and say, "Yeah, can I please have $3 million or $5 million in cash?" You can't do that. There's a lot of speculation. Most of the online consensus seems to suggest that she must be just hiding in Louisiana, keeping the son away from his father. In 2021, she was indicted in California for kidnapping the kid, but she has not been seen since. Completely vanished. Allegedly in Louisiana. Louisiana is a small ass state. Granted, half the state's a fucking swamp, and lots of places are probably definitely off grid there. But this lady poof vanished and has not been seen since. And the only thing I can think of is she had connections in Canada. Maybe she was able to cross a border, a la Sharon Kinney. But I think she's dead.
You think she's dead.
I think she's dead.
So you
I hope
think
she's not.
she went off somewhere and killed herself with her son?
I don't know, but in 2025, unless you have crazy skills, it is impossible to vanish off the grid. You cannot do it.
She's going to leave some kind of trail, is what you're saying.
Right. There has
Yeah.
to be some financial trail. I mean, you and I just walking around in our daily life, going to the grocery store and the bank and doing our random horse shit. We're caught on video cameras like 35 times when you drive past the bank and drive past, all the
Yeah.
cameras. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, she's either out of the country or she's no longer with us, is my suspicion. I mean, this kid is, obviously, regardless of the outcome, an unbelievable victim of a crazy situation. And I mean, I don't know what the dad did or didn't do. He, certainly alleged to have been done awful things, but he was released. And this guy hasn't seen his son since April of 2019. He had already not seen him
Hmm.
for close to a year when the kid vanished. But this lady is poof gone.
And Chris Barber's statement about her trying to get him to get into the room with her son, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's like it's almost
No,
like
of course I'm not doing that.
it's almost like pedophilia v proxy, isn't it? I mean,
Right. Munchausen. I don't
Munchausen, yeah,
know.
Munchausen by proxy, but with a weird child abuse. That's strange, Brian.
Yeah. So I've had this story, kind of saved up for like a year and a half because I was convinced that it would somehow be resolved. And it's just persisting. If you do some Googling on her, I mean, you can kind of parse the story together, which is what I did as best I could. There is quite a bit on Reddit talking about how the husband's awful and crazy, how she's awful and crazy, how her family's awful and crazy, and a whole bunch of just alleged horse shit that's not, that's probably all just Horseshit.
I'm guessing that she probably has a lot of ties, like in Vancouver, where they do a lot of filming for American television.
Could well. I mean, that's right.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, I don't know.
well, that's crazy. But you're right. I mean, it I'm kind of leaning towards dead as well because that's a hell of a magic trick.
Yep. So this actually came to us from a what I'm calling a FODI, FODI, a friend of Dream Idiots. Handed the story off. Someone who has a personal connection to her,
Oh,
but she is MIA, perhaps
well,
for good.
thank you, Fody, and thank you, Brian. I'll. This is kind of tickling somewhere in the back of my memory, this story, but I don't. Uh, yeah, I didn't know any of the information about it. I couldn't have named her or the husband or the kid or anything like that. I just couldn't do it. Um, I think I remember hearing about this a long time ago, but knew absolutely nothing about it. This is a weird one. You're
Yeah.
right.
So
Well,
perhaps there'll be an updates. I don't
thank you for uh no, that's one thing about the missing person cases of today, right? Is that you can't vanish. I mean,
know.
unless you go all money and that's all you use, but then there'd be a record of that, of you taking your money out.
Right, but I mean, but then that would be it. So if
Yeah.
eventually you had a huge pile of cash that you could somehow store safely, because I mean, storing cash is would be a hard thing to do, and then you go through an endless series of, I guess, prepaid cell phones, and you
You
walk
have to.
and you walk away from all other traditional sources of communication, identification, banking, any of that stuff. You just have to drop is the only way to do it, I guess.
What a strange tale. Thank you, Brian.
Yep. Yep.
That's a weird one for this fine Monday afternoon. Does that lead into our curse word of the week?
Curse word is Edward 40 hands. Like Edward Scissorhands, only with 40.
40 as in the
The
number 40?
Mhm.
I have no idea. I've never heard this before.
I'm not sure whether this I've seen this more than once. Most recently, I saw it again on Urban Dictionary. I'm not sure whether this is like a fraternity prank, or what it is exactly. But so you take two bottles of malt liquor, 40-ounce bottles of malt liquor, and you have them taped to each hand, and they can't be taken off until you finish them. But the reality is, the problem you find yourself in is that you have to go pee before you finish the bottles, and so
Oh, so you
you
can't finish one and remove it? You have to finish
you
both of them
have
and
to
remove
finish
them both at the
both,
same. Oh,
right? And so what purportedly happens is you then have to get a friend to go with you to the bathroom. Which you and I are friends, but I'm sorry if you have bottles of liquor taped to your hands and you want me to help you go to the bathroom. I'm sorry, you have to just
that's
wait yourself. Sorry.
you need to go sail. You need to go sail your own ship there, partner.
Right. Just go in the backyard. You'll be fine.
That sounds horrible, and I'm even more glad that I was never in a fraternity.
Right. Me too.
Well, shall we commence with our second story of the day?
Go for it.
Good. Brian, I'm just going to go ahead and apologize to you and the listeners in advance for what I'm about to do to you. Um, let's start by talking about a woman named Jaclyn Frances Labafish. You ever heard that name?
Laba fish?
Labofish. Labafish.
Laba
I think
fish.
it says,
No
yeah.
idea.
She was born November 29th, 1921, in the District of Columbia. She was the elder of two girls born to John and Adrienne Labafish, who had met during World War I. John was in the U.S. Navy, and Adrienne was a local girl. I mean that literally. She was an ethnic Breton, that is, part of the subculture belonging to Brittany, France. They met in Brest, France, which some sharp-eared listeners may remember from the Jazz Ambassadors three-parter from episodes 139 to 141 here on this very podcast. So the Labafishes moved back to the States after the war, and Adrienne gave birth to their daughters. They set up their household in Washington, D.C. The Labafish family hired a live-in physical trainer for the whole family. His name was Angelo Siciliano.
A trainer, you said?
A physical trainer, yeah. Basically what we would call a physical trainer.
Uh,
Siciliano, so he's Irish, good Irish boy.
obviously.
Jackie and her sister Madeline learned gymnastics from Angelo, as well as proper weightlifting techniques, and they also developed a jogging regimen. So health became pretty important to the Labafish family. Siciliano would go on to body culture fame after he changed his name to Charles Atlas. So this is Charles Atlas of the old comic book ads of they kick sand in my face at the beach. That guy, that Charles Atlas was her
Okay.
personal trainer. She was a kid. Now, at the age of 15, Jackie did what a lot of 1930 teens wanted to do but didn't. She ran away from home and joined the circus. Unlike most teens who actually did run away to the circus, she did not sweep up elephant poop, nor did she end up dead on the side of a railway somewhere. No, she soared high above that elephant poop as an aerialist on the rings and bars. She actually toured with Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus as part of the Flying Wallendas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so married. Pretty cool, right? She was also a chorus girl at one point, and she never left exercise behind, especially when her youthful travels were over. At the age of 40, she finally completed high school. So, shades of Strangers with Candy. She returned to Washington, D.C. to open the first women's only gymnasium.
Oh,
That's
cool.
pretty cool. It was called Barbella's. She also hosted a local television show, the subject of which was health regimens. So she's a mover and a shaker in the health industry world. By the 1980s, she was into the sporting world as a wrestling promoter for female wrestlers. She appeared often on Glow, the glorious, or is it Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling?
Hmm.
Right. Also in the 80s, she teamed up with the late Richard Simmons and produced a series of best-selling workout tapes aimed at an older audience titled Silver Foxes. The sales for Silver Foxes, Brian, and I'd never heard, I heard of Jazzercise and all that stuff and Jane Fonda's workout tapes. The sales were in the tens of millions for these things.
Oh,
So
shoot.
they did not do poorly with this endeavor. So if being a circus performer was the first act of her life and then being a health enthusiast was the second, the third act of her life was no less astonishing, which brings us tangentially to the real subject of the story. As a young girl, Jaclyn met a friend of her father's, a man named Edgar Casey. That's Cayce. Are you familiar with Edward Casey? He's an
C-A-Y. No.
he's an interesting dude. He was a native Kentuckian. He was born in 1877. And Casey's story is too long to go into here specifically, but I'll tell you what he did in a minute. Suffice it to say that the Labafishes counted Casey as a friend in their social circles sometime in the late 20s to early 30s when the family lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Casey sensed in young Jaclyn an untapped power, one which, quote, the world would soon recognize. And I guess that's soon on a cosmic scale because 6 decades later, after this encounter, Jackie knew what her family friend had meant way back then. She was an extremely gifted psychic. Edward Casey, when he was alive, never claimed to be a part of the spiritualist movement of the early part of the 20th century because he was a devout Christian, but he did claim to be a clairvoyant.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so he could see the future, see your future, but he was also an ardent Christian. He's a very interesting dude, actually. Um, so forecasting the future, as we know, may take many forms. There's tarot card readings. Okay, I've got a tarot deck somewhere. There's palmistry, the reading of palms. There's tasseography. That's the reading of tea
Oh, yeah.
leaves.
Okay.
Reading of tea leaves. Yep. There's scrying.
No idea.
That's gazing into a crystal ball is scrying. Jackie's specialty was astrology,
Hmm.
but she also applied a lesser known divination practice, one which dates back, according to her, the ancient civilizations of Babylon, India, Greece, and Rome. And this particular divination practice involves studying the shape and contours of a person's buttocks in order to determine their personal character and future. Jackie coined the term rumpology to describe her area of expertise. That's
I got that.
aspertise.
I got it.
According to Jackie, the left buttock is linked to the right hemisphere of the brain, and the right buttock to the left hemisphere,
Huh.
much in the way, say, our eyeballs are. The left cheek represents the past, the right represents the future. At one point in her career, all you had to do was send her a digitized image of your bare ass and enclose $125 in payment, and you could get a personal reading. Now,
Yeah.
as with most things dealing with one's ass, there's some meat on this bone. Jackie was not the only practitioner of rumpology. There's also a fellow over in Europe. I'll leave him nameless for now. He's blind, So he reads your rump by touching you. And in any occasion where he might comment upon, say, quote, a strange red mark on your buttock, you know he's lying about being blind, in which case he's not reading your future, he's doing something else. Um, that is a real person, and I'm just kidding. He apparently is blind, and he is a most noted rumpologist. Rumpology is related to another form of divination, which also apparently goes back thousands of years. Let's dig a little deeper with anomancy. Do you know what anomancy is, Brian?
No idea.
It is, quote, the reading of the folds and wrinkles of the anus.
Huh.
In
Very, very
ancient time,
niche.
literally, in ancient times, the anomancy procedure went something like this. The person being read would strip from the waist down and generously apply henna to their buttocks and into the vertical smile. They would then spread cheeks and sit on parchment or papyrus leaves and leave their imprint, which would then be read by the anomancer. So we're dealing with basically a Rorschach ass blot test,
Right, right. Mhm.
right? Okay. My text for this section of the story comes from a 1945 book titled Anomancy, a treatise on the readings of the folds and wrinkles of the anus, authored by Zhuang Yunfei and translated by Gail Santamaria Liu. Rather than dive into the specific nature of the anomancy process, I'm just going to read some of the chapter and subheading titles to give you a little taste of anomancy. And Brian,
Don't take
here's the
base.
here's the cover. Chapter 1. What is anomancy? Here's a couple of subheadings from this chapter. The anatomy of the anus, a mirror of the soul.
Oh my God.
Another subheading. Folds and wrinkles, the hidden topography of destiny.
Okay.
I think that's also a B-sides alternate cut album from Yes as well, or Anderson,
Earth,
Buford, Wakeman, and Howe. Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Chapter 2. There's 10 chapters, by the way. Chapter 2, Preparation and Rituals for an Accurate Reading. The subheading that stood out to me from this one is the ideal environment, lights, aroma, and energies. Chapter 3, this is when we get into the physiology of it. It's called Anal Typologies, the Folds of Destiny. You might have a spiral anus, in which case you're looking at karmic cycles and past lives.
Hmm.
Or perhaps you have what's called the blooming anus, which is about prosperity and emotional openness. It's
And it's
also
also chilies.
it's also the original name of the bloomin' onion from Outback Steakhouse,
Okay.
which of course was originally just deep fried wombat anus, but few people know that. The third kind he talks about is the serpent's anus, imminent betrayals and deceptions. And finally, the section in chapter 3, zigzag folds, life's unexpected twists. Chapter 4 is called Anomancy and Love, Romantic Readings. The subheading I've chosen from this one is your soulmate written in your anus?
Yes.
Chapter 5, I don't have any subheadings. I'll let you work this out on your own. The title of chapter 5 is Sex Through Anomancy.
No thanks.
Chapter 6, Work and Money in the Folds of the Anus. I keep my money in the folds of my wallet, Brian, or
Yeah.
in a bank.
Right.
And then
Typically.
it says the subheading for this episode is the anus is a financial compass. How to make decisions based on its reading. And I say, don't do that. That's how you do that. Do not do that.
Sign here, initial here, thumbprint, anus print. Like, no.
Chapter 7, Health and Longevity. And the subheading here is longevity written in the anus. How much time do you have left? And how much of that time left do you really want to spend it with someone sizing up your chocolate starfish?
Right.
Chapter 8, Interpreting Wrinkles on a Spiritual Level. And the subtitle for this one, The Illuminated Anus, Connections with the Spiritual. And I'm picturing a guy with a light bulb lodged in his ass and turning to the bartender and says, I said I wanted a Bud Light. Chapter 9, Advanced Anomancy, Techniques and Reading Methods. The subtitle is The Anus During an Eclipse, Readings in Astrologically Powerful Moments.
So
I am
absurd.
I'm not a doctor, but if your anus is in eclipse, go see a doctor immediately.
Right.
And then finally, there's chapter 10, which are case studies, and it's called Real Cases of Successful Predictions. And this is where the narrator of the book gives 3 or 4 examples of successful readings that he had with people. Okay, so
Define
I'm
successful
getting into it.
how?
I'm getting into it. I was going to read excerpts from this, but I'm going to read the entirety of this one bit. This is called Anomancy on a Flight to Singapore, and I'm reading directly from the text. The hum of the airplane filled the air as we soared through the clouds on our way to Singapore. The atmosphere was slightly tense, as often happens on long flights, but there was also a certain excitement that only arises in these moments of transition between sky and earth. I couldn't help it. My mind drifted toward the art I cherish most, Anomancy. That's not what I do on a plane, Brian.
Oh, good. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mhm. Why not take advantage of the time to offer a quick reading to my fellow travelers? With a bit of luck, I could help someone uncover hidden secrets about their health or well being. As the plane glided through the sky, planes don't glide, gliders glide.
Right.
I decided to approach a passenger who seemed particularly anxious. He says the name, but I'm not going to say it here. He was a Japanese businessman with a worried expression. His eyes were glued to the seat screen, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. I introduced myself as an animancer. What do you do? I sell shower curtain rings. Oh, I deal with rings too. Organic rings. After some small talk about life and travel, he became open to hearing what I had to say about his life, especially regarding his health and well-being. At first, he was skeptical, but his curiosity about the folds of his anus intrigued him enough to accept my offer. I reassured him that the reading would take place in a private and comfortable setting. You're on a goddamn plane.
The airplane bathroom. Here we go.
So we decided to use the airplane's small restroom.
I was joking, but
Where are you going to go? The galley? I mean, as the aircraft swayed gently with the air currents, we entered the tiny cubicle, where the scent of airplane soap and the light rocking of the cabin created an almost surreal atmosphere. Still somewhat apprehensive, the subject insisted on cleanliness as a prerequisite. With a smile, I pulled out a small bottle of soap I had brought with me, ensuring proper hygiene, an essential element of any animantic reading. The scent of lemon filled the space, and amid laughter, he began to relax. Once everything was in order, we began the reading. His anal folds revealed intriguing patterns. I noticed a mix of soft and deeply marked lines indicating he'd been dealing with a great deal of stress or, constipation. The shapes that appeared were almost like a map, telling stories about his personal and professional life. The lines represented his internal struggles, especially regarding his job and the expectations others placed on him. As the plane swayed slightly, my fingers gently traced the wrinkles on his skin. I explained that the deeper marks suggested accumulated tension and a lack of rest, likely due to his long working hours and his reluctance to ask for help. He was astonished at how a simple analysis could reveal so much about his life. At that moment, he realized he needed to start prioritizing his physical and emotional well being, which, in my opinion, starts by getting the fuck out of that bathroom. When the ended, he seemed relieved, and although the experience was unusual, I felt I had left a positive mark on his life. We returned to our seats, and while the flight continued, we both had a new story to tell, an account of animancy in an airspace that defied logic. Almost finished. Ultimately, the rest of the journey became more enjoyable. With a calmer mind, he began sharing anecdotes about his life in Japan, and the flight, instead of being just a mere trip, turned into a shared experience. And so, amidst laughter and the lingering scent of airplane soap, our encounter in the restroom became a symbol of how animancy can illuminate even the most unexpected moments, turning a simple flight into a journey of self discovery.
He is taking himself very seriously.
Well, or, basically he did a cold reading of the guy and said, "Hey, this guy's a businessman, clearly.
All right.
He's stressed. I want to look at this guy's butthole." Bryan, 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 could you imagine big from the flight deck? This is your captain speaking. We've entered our final descent into Boston's local international airport. In preparation for landing, flight attendants will be passing through the cabin to collect any items you want to dispose of. Help them out by having those items at the ready. It's also time to bring your seat back to its original upright position and get those tray tables stowed and locked. And if you're crammed in one of the lavatories with a total stranger who's peeping your stink hole, please pull up your pants, wash your hands, and return to your seat. We know you have a choice when it comes to air travel, and we appreciate you choosing us. It's been our pleasure today to get to where you're going, and if Boston's your final destination, have a great day. Looks like we'll be rolling up to the gate about 7 minutes ahead of schedule. Bryan, any comments or questions?
Well, it's preposterous, of course, and ludicrous in more ways than I can count. But it's it's no more ridiculous than Catholicism.
Oh, I think it's way more ridiculous than Catholicism.
No, not really. So
Look,
Catholics think that Jesus foreskin, that Jesus had was circumcised, and his foreskin is currently being held in 3 or 4 different churches in Europe. The whole thing's fucking crazy. So astrology, palm reading, this is insane and hilarious and worthy of derision. But this is Seventh Day Adventist. This is all of them. This is a crazy ass belief system based on horseshit. Or I'm sorry, human shit, I guess in this case. It's ridiculous, but
you
worthy of derision. Comically stupid.
my wife's Catholic. I was in a Catholic wedding. You were in my
Okay.
wedding. It was a
Right.
Catholic wedding.
Right.
It didn't involve pulling our pants down and
No.
looking at each
Right.
other's stink holes, right? As a coda, there's another gift bestowed upon us by Jackie Labafish. Remember Jackie Labafish, the lady who started this whole thing off
I
with?
forgot about her. Poor Jackie. Forgot about Jackie.
Jackie married 5 times in her life and divorced 4 of them. Her second husband was a man named Frank, to whom she was married from the mid 40s to sometime in the 1950s, possibly as late as 1959. Jackie and Frank had 2 boys, Frank Jr. and Sylvester. And that's where actor Sylvester Stallone came from.
Oh my God.
Jackie Labafish Stallone died September 21st, 2020, at the age of 98. I will close with a final quote from Zhang Yunfei, author of one of my sources. Quote, "A clean butt is the key to a precise reading." Sources for this.
My new mantra.
Uh, is it a story? I don't know if it's a story, what I just did. But anyway, Zhang
Crime.
Yunfei's book, originally published apparently in 1945, translated in 2019 by Gail Santamaria Liu. Anomancy, a treatise of the reading of the folds and wrinkles of the anus from Sabageria Ancestral, which gives no publication city.
Hmm.
And then I don't know if it's Suze or Suez, but Suez Halder, the unknown date, astrologer and psychic Jaclyn Stallone article at jaclynstallone.com, and Wikipedia for information on Edgar Casey. So that is a story that I'm calling Digging Deeper with Anomancy. And
So
again, that this might be the worst thing I've ever done on this show, Bryan.
head and shoulders. Yeah. Yeah. By a large margin. So recently we did you did the three-parter on aesthetic realism and
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic realists. There are now I think you said there are only 3 or 4 dozen adherents followers.
Yeah, it's
How many
66.
how many followers, adherents, or practitioners are there of
No idea.
anime? Okay,
No idea. Um, yeah, this was a weird one.
worst cult ever.
And the best part about it is we had guests in the house
You're
while I was
laughing.
working on this story, and they were like, and both of these guys, and they're like, "What are you?" And I said, "Bryan has no idea what's in store for him," and I started telling him about this. So, all right, from the sublime of well, no, there's nothing sublime about missing kids and missing people.
Nope.
From the horrific to the ridiculous, I guess.
Yeah.
We've run the gamut here on Dream Idiots today.
Thanks for listening, folks. If you can, give us 5 stars on whichever platform you're on. Give us a review too. Haven't had any new reviews in a while. That'd be great.
I
Supposedly
can't
that
imagine what they're going to say
I
now.
know, I know. Supposedly that helps us. New website at dreamidiots.com. Shoot us a story idea. If you want, merch is on there. Whole back catalog is on there. And drop us a line just to say hello. That would be
Yes.
fabulous. We appreciate you listening to our ridiculousness.
Yes. Not waving, drowning. Yes, that's all I got. So thank you, Brian. And y'all have a good week as we get into these silly dog days of summer. I've got a few more silly stories coming up in the next few weeks. And be good to each other.